keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope you're enjoying another beautiful day, fall day in the Mile High City, and I hope you're ready for a pretty action-packed sports weekend coming up here in Colorado. And I have so much that I want to get into, but I think the person who I'm going to get into it with, some may say he's a man that needs no introduction, but he's been introduced many ways, some positive, some negative. You may know him as Chicken Little. You may know him as the grand poobah of denversports.com, but we all know him as James Merilatt, and he is here with me today. James, how are you?
I'm good, Richie. That was a nice intro.
Yeah.
Most of the things I'm referred to are not pleasant and not nice.
Your
so
name,
I appreciate you.
Your name has been morphed in more ways
Yes.
than I can count via the text line, via social media. And while I have to applaud the creativity and stinging nature of most of the adaptations, some of them are not always safe for air.
Correct. But I do tip my cap anytime somebody gets creative with it. It's like, hey, it's sports. It's all fun. We can go down that road. It's all good.
Absolutely. Well, I was in the building last night for the Avs game, and it was an interesting experience for me because I, more so than most, I think, have been driving the Alexander Georgiev hate train. I just was so done with it. The 4 Giev, 5 Giev, 6 Giev, whatever you want to call it. And I had totally lost faith. And maybe the last handful of games proves why I'm not, in a shiny suit with great hair like Jared Bednar and making those decisions, because after a brief respite, to maybe get his head right and take himself out of the limelight a little bit, Alexander Georgiev seems like he's coming back to form a little bit.
A little bit, but last night was like a classic example. Like they gave up 2 goals in the first period, 1 in the first
30
minute.
seconds. First 30 seconds. I had not even the handful of popcorn that I shoved into my mouth as I walked into our suite had not even hit my esophagus yet, and the crowd was silenced.
Yeah, so that was concerning. And then look, they were just really good in front of him last night. He only faced 15 shots, and 2 of them went in the net. So, he wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. He was fine. And I've said this a lot when it comes to Georgie. Look, that's what he's going to be. He's never going to be great. But this team isn't built to win like Tampa. They're not built to win 2-1. They're built to win like they did last night, 4-2.
They haven't been built.
5-3.
They haven't been built to win that way in decades.
No, I mean they won a cup with Darcy Kemper, and he was
he had the worst save percentage of any Stanley Cup championship goalie, I believe. If it wasn't the worst, it was up there. Now I'll say this. I understand he faced less shots than normal. And, when you're facing shots in the mid-teens, the expectation is that you'd hope at the NHL level you can stop him. But he's 3-1 in his last 4 games.
Yep.
And his one loss was a 1-0 loss to a really good Winnipeg team. They have Washington coming up later this week, and that's a good test for them. Double-digit wins, a team that can put up some firepower offensively. And I think we'll see. But I'm starting to almost be faced with walking back my own kind of emotional frustration, where I said that there's no way that the Avalanche can win a cup with Alexander Georgiev. I may not be able to go all the other way, as some have, as like the only way the Avs are going to win a cup is if it is with Alexander Georgiev and he figures it out, because there's the other school of thought is that they either have to win it with Eustace or Kaapo Kakkonen or some goalie that's not on the roster yet. And that seems actually, now that I'm less emotional about it, that actually seems more difficult to fathom.
Agreed.
Than if Georgie can just hold on and figure it out the way that Darcy Kemper did toward the postseason of their cup run.
We know the formula. We saw it a couple of years ago, and I think he can be that good of a goaltender. He can certainly be as good as Darcy and Frankie were during that run. Frankie, it was a great story, but I think they won one of the games he started like 8-6 against Edmonton. Like,
I was there.
Yes,
it was. It was like 7-4 or 8-5
that night, but he got the win. That's how this team has to win. They've spent their money on, McKinnon and Makar and Rantanen and Val, who's going to be coming back. Like that's a bigger issue to me than what's going on in net, because what's going on in net is exactly what we should have expected. Like the fact that they lost a 1-0 game, like, well, that's not on him. That's on the guys that are making a bunch of money that aren't supposed to be putting up a goose egg.
You're right. Yeah, they got a hat trick last night. They got some contribution. It was nice to see Lecky get on the board.
Yep.
But you're right. Tomorrow is going to be the most highly anticipated game of the season and might be the most hold your breath game that the Avs have all season until the point if and when Gabe Landeskog steps back onto the ice after a handful of years off, because Friday Val comes back, and you're also going to get Jonathan Drouin and Miles Wood as well. And so you're going to get a series of reinforcements there to help bolster some of those lines. And we're going to find out. I am of the mind. There's no, I want no grace period, no warm-up period for Val. He better hit the ice and be the 2021 Val Nichushkin, who I thought had a inside shot to win the Conn Smythe Trophy the year they won the Cup. It's got to be significant.
Yeah, he's not coming off of an injury, so there's no grace period here, right? He has no reason to have not been keeping himself in shape, and I get it. Getting out there on the ice and playing in an NHL game is different than any kind of skating you could do to try and get your legs under you. But I'm with you. He gets no benefit of the doubt. You got to hit the ground running, so to speak.
And I say that in part because I don't know how much more they're going to be able to get back. I mean, I know Ross Colton and they have some other guys, but I don't know if Gabe Landeskog's ever coming back.
I think we need to just assume he's not.
I agree. And so, like, there's no more once Val comes back, for me, on a scale of that magnitude, there is no more like, hey, we still have this coming down the road.
No, you can't wait. You can't hold out hope.
Everything else is gravy. So
they're a cup contender with Val. They are.
I agree. And I think that the window that they have to maximize the championship potential that we saw realized in 2021 is shrinking rapidly. And so it puts a lot of pressure on this season. And while their winning formula still has a lot of variables to me that need to be figured out, I think a team that has an equal amount of pressure and expectation, but a lot more figured out, is the Colorado Buffaloes. And to the degree where I actually think there has been almost an unfair expectation change placed upon them, because it feels like we've kind of graded Prime sliding scale to somewhat of his own creation, because he has not been bashful about putting those things out there. You know, in his first year when he came in, he took over a 1-win team, and we're like, they better go to a bowl game. They better win 6 times as many games as they did this past year. And they started out 3-0, and it was, oh my gosh, that TCU game was one of the wildest games that I've seen in a long time. And they fell short. It fell off the rails after that. You come back to earth, and it became evident that you can't just skill position other teams in college to death. But then in this past offseason, they bolstered the trenches. They improved their offensive defensive lines to a significant degree. And they're really good now.
They are.
They are not a front runner. They're not a paper tiger. They are genuinely a good team. My question to you is, do you believe, as Coach Primes likes to say, do you believe they are a legitimate college football playoff contending team now?
Yeah. I think at this point, it would be extremely disappointing if they don't make the Big 12 title game.
I was going to get there next.
And then once you're there, you're most likely going to play BYU. They're undefeated. I get it, but that's a beatable team.
Not an easy team, but a beatable team.
So if you lose that game, it would be disappointing just because you got so close, but I don't think you could be mad about it, right? I think at this point, given that they've got a Utah team in here that's playing a true freshman at quarterback, they go to Kansas City at Arrowhead to play a Kansas team that I think is 3-6. Then they come back here and finish it up the day after Thanksgiving against a bad Oklahoma State team. If you stub your toe in one of those games and blow this opportunity, that would be one of the bigger choke jobs in Colorado sports history. Not winning the Big 12 title game wouldn't be. Not getting there certainly would be.
I believe. And again, I think that goes to the sliding nature of how we've kind of graded or set our expectations for this team. Because going into the season, because they didn't make a bowl game last year, it was just like, hey, they have to make a bowl game, and we also thought the Big 12 was going to maybe in some aspects be better top to bottom than it was. And so that maybe factored into that. Then we kind of realized, hey, CU, they got out to another hot start. Some of the other Big 12 teams kind of stumbled, or the teams that we thought were going to be good, a la Kansas, who was a preseason top 20 AP team, totally fell off the rails. Although watching them against Iowa State, that's still a team that can beat you. They have talent. So I think that's a little bit of a 3-6 potential trap game for the Buffs, who have to kind of treat every game like the Super Bowl going forward to get to where they need to go. But so it went from, hey, they got to make a bowl game to no. This has to be like an 8-9 win team based on how things are shaking out. Then they start to creep up toward that, and they lose to Kansas State, and it kind of takes a step back. It's like, well, okay, like now we got to hope that at best they can be like that 10-2 team that maybe gets an at-large in the college football playoff. Then everything breaks their way, and Iowa State loses, K-State loses again. BYU narrowly avoids another loss, which could have catapulted them almost even further into that tied for first spot in the Big 12. And now, for me, it feels like the Big 12 title game, a loss in the Big 12 title game might not be enough. You got to go win it. I think they need to make an auto bid into the college football playoff, and then you can go from there. If you're a top 4 team and then you lose to a top 3 team in the country, you run into an SEC team or an Ohio State or something like that. Okay, fine. I mean, these are the blue bloods of college football that have been dominant for a decade, but it's right there. And I think you have to take it. And at some point, I'm not so sure that while it would be cool, it would be hard for a lot of people to say that it's a loss in the Big 12 would be like, deflating. For me, it would be, because I don't know how many more times you can stack all this together.
Well, I'm with you on that front, right? Because this is a little bit of a, Haley's Comet type of a moment. It comes around pretty rarely. I've been following this team for decades. They were really good in the 90s. They had the 2001 team that should have gone to the national title game and didn't. They had the kind of decent team in 2016 that played in the Pac-12 title game, and that's kind of been it, right? So in the last 25 years, in this century, they've been good now 3 times, this being the 3rd time.
I've watched it happen with my own eyes. My beloved Michigan State Spartans made a run when I was in college to it was like the 2nd or 3rd college football playoff at that time in 2015. And they won the Big 12 title, or the Big 10 title game. They were the 4 seed. They went up against number 1 Alabama, got absolutely boat raced in Jerry World, and they haven't sniffed it since.
Yeah, but this team, they're good. I don't know that I'm ready to say they're great yet. They have some great talent. Obviously, in most games, they're going to have the best quarterback on the field. I think in every game. I don't know that there's a better quarterback in college football. They're going to have the best player on the field. Travis Hunter should win the Heisman Trophy, or they should just get rid of it. Just get rid of it.
Right, exactly.
It's just the best quarterback on the best team.
That also factors into my belief that it's college football playoff or bust, because you have the Heisman Trophy favorite, and you have someone who, while he's on the Heisman Trophy list in Shedeur Sanders, he's toward the bottom of the kind of real deal contenders. But you've got in Shedeur Sanders a quarterback that's going to be one of the first couple taken off the board in the draft. So you've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country and the best player in the country, who happens to also play 2 ways. If you don't make it to that highest stage, I feel like that's a disappointment.
Well, it'll be a disappointment. I'm just saying I won't be angry. I'll be disappointed.
You won't be angry. You get angry about everything.
It also depends on how it went down. But, but yeah, those 2 guys give you a chance in every game. But the reason this team is 7-2, the reason this team is in the position they are, is because that defense is so much better than it was a year ago when they blew a 29-0 lead at home against a very mediocre, and that's being kind, Stanford team. And that's when the season just unraveled.
Oh, that was brutal.
That defense, Richie, the way they just fly around, I think they've got 12 different guys that have had a sack this year. They put pressure on the quarterback. It's an opportunistic playmaking defense. They have athletes all over the field. Now, when they play an SEC team, maybe they won't have the best talent, but they're going to have a hell of a lot better talent on the field than BYU does. They're going to. So I thought Brock Heward, our friend Brock Heward, did a great job on the broadcast on Saturday. And he made the point a couple of times about how they've got NFL coaches on that staff, and they can make in-game adjustments like an NFL team. And we saw it. They were not good in the first quarter. They were lucky they were only down 13-0.
I literally was, I turned to the people that I was watching it with, and I was like, I just don't think they have it today. They came out sluggish after a bye.
Again,
yeah,
right?
100%.
The tortillas flying all over the place, and I was so annoyed that every commercial break.
That is a dumb tradition. Okay?
It's a terrible tradition.
It's so, and I understand the way that it came about, I think is a clever, snarky way, because I think it came about because some coach or some opposing person who came into there was like, there's nothing in Lubbock but Texas Tech in a tortilla factory. And so they're doing it like in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, which I respect on the surface. But it was disgusting looking at the field with like soggy, ripped tortillas everywhere.
It's disgusting.
Shador signing the tortilla, though, hilarious.
Classic.
It's now been framed.
It's classic.
And so the mold that will grow inside there is going to be great.
I also don't like the fact that for whatever reason, it's not a penalty that they're throwing stuff all over the field during the action.
Yeah.
Like during the opening kickoff, there were tortillas all over the place.
And again, and maybe that's another one of my issues with it is if it was like one time during the game, like every game that they win, the losing team gets showered with tortillas and all that.
Right.
Okay, whatever. But I mean, there's 6-7 kickoffs in a game.
Yeah.
You know,
it was ridiculous. And then later in the game, I mean, it got kind of out of hand and people were throwing other things. And it's like, yeah, but if you're letting them do that to start the game.
Yeah. And you know what?
You're setting the
and I'm
precedent.
I'm so glad this is going to touch another hot button issue for me, that we had parabolic mics on the field that picked up the referee's response to Coach Prime when he was getting livid about the guys throwing the field. And he was like, well, your guys are blowing kisses or something like that. They're like waving bye-bye after touchdowns or whatever. It's like, so you're not going to penalize the home team for throwing non-food projectiles onto the thing because you think that it's not classy that they're waving bye-bye or blowing kisses or whatever. That is so stupid.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that audio was there because I will forever bang the drum that I hate officials in all sports. I hate officiating. If we could find a way to I want robo umps. I want chips in the ball so I don't have to worry about seeing two old guys jog out with a chain ever again. If we can figure out a way to do it without totally disrupting the integrity or the flow of the sport, I'm for it. Because they have no accountability for everything. I think they should have to stand up in press conferences and answer questions to the media about their calls the way coaches and players do.
Agreed.
So that was just, I'm not going to go on a tangent, even though I already did. Sidebar for me that I loved. So but I'll wrap it up with this. You do believe that this team has the talent to compete on the college football playoff stage?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. And I've been saying for 3 weeks, they're going to the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before things broke their direction. Now I'm firmly convinced of it. They're going.
I do too. So I want to flip that to the professional football team here in Denver. After 10 weeks through the season, do you believe yet?
No.
Do you believe that Bo Nix is the next franchise quarterback for the Broncos yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
Why?
Because he hasn't played well or beaten a good team. He plays well in spurts against bad teams.
Okay.
And he plays well. Like, great. You beat the Saints and the Panthers.
Okay.
They're the two worst defenses in the league.
So what I'm hearing from you is that if I told you before the season that I had a crystal ball and 10 weeks into this 2024 season, the Broncos were going to have a quarterback that leads all rookies in total touchdowns and touchdown passes and is second in passing yards, rushing yards, completion percentage, all of those. He is top 2 in every statistical category and leads the rookie quarterbacks in total touchdowns. You'd be like, nah, I'm not impressed. I'm not happy.
I'm not saying I'm not impressed. I'm not saying I'm not happy. I'm saying I don't believe they have their answer for the next decade. I don't believe it yet. I'm not saying he's not.
Okay. Let me ask you a follow-up question, because this was asserted by our own Josh Dover. I made a promo about it and all that. Whether he's the next franchise quarterback or not, is Bo Nix, do you believe he is the quarterback who is the first quarterback who's going to bring the Broncos a playoff victory since Peyton Manning? Given where the team is at right now, they're still in contention for it.
No, they're not winning a playoff game this year, even if they make it. They should make it. They've got enough cupcakes. I mean,
you don't think they can be a wild card steal?
No, because they're not going to go into Buffalo or Kansas City or Baltimore and win a playoff game.
They almost just beat Kansas City now.
They also had 53 yards of total offense and no points in the second half.
It was enough to beat them.
And I get it. And Patrick Mahomes missed 2 wide open touchdown throws that you'd get benched as a high school quarterback if you didn't make those throws. And then they kicked the ball short of the landing zone and give them the ball in the 40. But everything they needed to happen.
But they did happen. Everything that needed to happen to put the Buffs in this situation that they're currently in happened, and we don't make them apologize.
The Broncos have a defense that's good enough to win in the playoffs. They do not have an offense that's good enough to win in the playoffs.
Do you think that
it's hard for me to say the quarterback's the right guy.
Do you think that they have progressed enough from week 1 to week 10 that by week 17 that they can have an offense that can contend as a wild card playoff team in conjunction with that defense?
Maybe. They've gotten better. The offense has gotten better. But again, I think we feel like that because of how they played against Carolina and New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that long ago where they were awful for 3 quarters against the Chargers at home. I mean, just dreadful. Had less than 100 yards offense.
In no way am I going to compare these two, but let's not. I mean, a Baltimore Ravens team dragged Trent Dilfer through a Super Bowl. Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time and proved it a million times over by the end of his career, was definitely ushered into a handful of Super Bowls early in his career by having a great defense. Yeah. And I'm not saying the Broncos are going to win a Super Bowl, but I do think if their offense can continue to just chip away the way that I've seen them over the first 2.5 months of a season, I can see a world where Bo Nix can competitively go in there with a playoff caliber matchup and at least make it close, if not win.
I haven't seen it yet. And again, it's the fact that they had 3 possessions in the second half with the lead and went 2 yards, 10 yards, minus 2 yards with the lead, a chance to go give yourself some breathing room, and they couldn't do anything. That's a bad offense. That's just and so I don't believe in the head coach because he's the play caller. He's the offensive coordinator. I don't.
That's the real root of all of this.
He's 13 and 14
watching,
as the Broncos.
This is what's really driving James's opinion that I've been trying to dig out here.
Go ahead. I believe in their quarterback more than I believe in their head coach.
I'm aware.
Right? But I mean, the fact that they had the situation they did with Alex Forsythe is on the head coach. I get it. He's got coordinators.
He said as much. Sean Payton said, hey, that's on us as coaches. We should have noticed that.
The fact that the Chiefs noticed it and they didn't is inexcusable. It's the kind of thing. Imagine if that happened under VJ or Vic Fangio or Nathaniel Hackett. We'd be going crazy. But because he's Sean Payton and he won a Super Bowl a decade and a half ago, he gets a total free pass.
I don't know that he gets a total free
Everybody's
pass.
all over Forsythe. Nobody's on.
They should be. They should be.
Well,
it's on the coach and the coaching staff, who, by the way, he does pay several coaching staff members to watch the special teams.
But Richie, I coach a 12-year-old football team. We kick extra points. Most teams don't, but we do because you get 2 points if you kick it. If the same guy gets blown up,
you get extra points for.
You get 2 if you kick it, 1 if you run a normal 2-point conversion. It flips because kicking is harder.
Okay.
So to get a snap, a hold, and a kick is difficult.
Yeah, at 12 years old. Okay, I got it.
So we kick him. If the same guy got blown up on the left side of my line and I never noticed it watching film, and then we give up a blocked kick at an inopportune time, is it on the kid that I kept running out there, or is it on me?
But it's on both of you. It's on both of you, because at the end of the day, it's on the coach. It's on the coach to put people in place to succeed. I agree with you there. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the coach isn't on the field playing. So the players on the field have to make the play, and that includes Alex Forsythe. And he didn't do it, and he's getting blown up several times because even though none of them have been blocked, several of them were close, as evidenced by the film that's going all over the place now. So at the end of the day, could Sean Payton, should he have put someone else in there? Yes. But it's on Alex Forsythe and the other 10 guys on the field who are asked to execute their job to do it, and they didn't. He's still an NFL player. He's still making money to do the job that he's been asked to do, and he didn't do it in that moment, and he's been dying slowly on a lot of other plays.
Yeah, and look, I don't give him a total free pass because you're right. He's a professional football player. He's an offensive lineman. He should be able to not get run over to that degree. I get it. But the fact that they didn't correct the problem and or replace the problem in the lineup, it's just inexcusable to me. It's inexcusable, but that's not the entire reason they lost the game. They could have won the game. That's not the entire reason they lost the game. They lost the game because their offense was awful in the second half. It just was.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. That was a absolute winnable game by all from the jump. They came out and threw some of the first punches. The Broncos did, and they carried it throughout the majority of the game. So I'm not saying that I'm not trying to give anybody free passes or orange slices and whatever either. But I just don't think that it's entirely fair to say that everything that goes wrong with the team is Sean Payton's fault. And I feel like you do that.
Buck stops there. But I will say this. I am ready to, and I people use the word great too much.
Elite.
There is another great player on that Broncos defense other than Pat Surtain.
Nick Bonito.
Nick Bonito is a great player.
Yeah.
Nick Bonito has made that leap. Like this isn't a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a he had 3 or 4 games out of the gate that were good, and then
What did he have? 6 sacks in 7 games.
I mean, he was in the backfield and hitting Patrick Mahomes. It seemed like on every pass play.
Yeah, he could have had a couple more sacks in that game.
The first one where Mahomes spun around and then threw it out of bounds, threw it away. That was a direct result of Nick Bonito not wanting to get a roughing the passer penalty.
Yep.
And he didn't come in and just lay him out. And the second time he did, that guy, he is a great pass rusher. He's a great player.
I will say too, that play that you're referencing where Mahomes spun around, he didn't just spin around and throw the ball out of bounds. He spun around and threw the ball like 40 miles an hour, 35 yards down the field while falling down. And it's like, it was just one of those moments where, like, God, that guy's a freak.
Yeah.
I don't understand how, like, you can tell at the NFL level, quarterbacks or certain players, like Aaron Donald was this way, the way he would just move, like, there are separators, and Patrick Mahomes is a separator player, and he showed it in that moment. But I agree with you. When your name is put alongside Von Miller in terms of a pass rushing statistical feat like Nick Bonito's was, it's not a fluke. A fluke is having one game where you just lined up against the Ty Sambrilos of the world and you got 4 sacks and you were just having a wrecking crew kind of day. And the Chiefs are having trouble with their tackle spots, and I think that was taken advantage of a little bit by the Broncos. But no, he's strung together a body of work that I think is absolutely worthy of recognition. And if there was a guy who maybe needed some of this Nick Bonito kind of blooms to happen, it's George Paton, because some of his draft picks that are not Pat Surtain are starting to kind of blossom a little bit. And I think that's really good to see, because he is that guy for the Broncos who is the main personnel talent evaluator. And if they're going to build around Bo Nix like they need to, and hopefully will, he's going to be a key part of that.
Yeah. And it is still kind of a no-name defense, and it is still a defense where the sum is greater than the individual parts. But I do think there are some guys who have emerged this year as players. Like Zach Allen's having a really good year. Jonathan Cooper's a nice pass rusher, but Nick Bonito is a great player. He really is. PJ Locke, they were so much better when he was back, like playing out there with a cast and a broken thumb. Like, that's playing defensive back, playing safety. I mean, that's pretty gutty, but all those guys matter and all of them are good, but Bonito's at a different level.
You mentioned emerging players, and I think that is an apt transition to the hardwood with the Denver Nuggets, who I think have witnessed the emergence of a couple of players in the start of their young season, most prominently being Christian Braun, who is now being thrust into a starting role, and I think has handled it better than I certainly expected.
Me too.
And better than a lot of others. I think he's been a bona fide, genuine contributor, and even in the games, in the slumps where they've struggled, it hasn't been because of him, who would have been the presumptive weak link trying to replace KCP in the rotation. But the likes of Peyton Watson, who's had more memorable blocks in the last 8 to 10 days than he may have in another stretch of his entire career. I was very concerned about the Nuggets, rightfully so, I think, as a lot of people were at the start of the season. But it really does feel like they're starting to catch a little bit of a rhythm and a stride and get those contributions from players who we maybe didn't expect it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think Christian Braun's been way better than expected. I think he's been every bit as good as KCP. I don't think there's a step backward there. I did not think, though, with him not coming off the bench, now that he's a starter, I was like, gosh, who do they have?
He was the kind of engine of that bench unit.
Yeah, it's because if you go back to when they won the championship, it was Jeff Green, it was Bruce Brown, it was Christian Braun. It was the Crayola crew, right? Well, now none of them are coming off the bench. They got to have a whole new crew be contributors, and I wasn't sure really any of them could be. I'm still not convinced of it. And I think they've been getting by the skin of their teeth. Like, they're 7-3. They could really easily be 4-6. You are what you are, right? And they've got the best player in the world on their team. He's gone out and played like it and carried them. I don't know if he can go out and put up the kind of games he's had in order to get the last couple of wins.
I'll give you credit on that, and I'll throw it up on the screen here because it's too much to even try to comprehend in terms of the statistical greatness that Jokic is achieving right now, being top 3 in the NBA in points, rebounds, assists, offensive rebounds, double doubles, triple doubles. All you go down that entire list, that is insane.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where every year that Jokic has won the MVP, including the year that he got robbed and they gave it to Joel Embiid where he won finals MVP, he set in his first MVP a statistical pace that I didn't think could be met. It was in terms of player efficiency rating and other metrics, it was the most efficient season of all time. So naturally, it's going to be like, okay, well, that's going to be hard to replicate. Then the next year, he not only replicated it, but increased it. And then he did it again. And it's like, I can't recall a player who consistently and continuously sets the bar so high and then finds a way to match it the following year or within that same handful of year stretch, but he's doing it again.
Yeah, and it's been incredible. Like, you do run out of superlatives to talk about what he's able to do. You know what bothered me though?
What?
Michael Malone going in and belly aching about the MVP voters.
He does tend to.
It's like the guy's won 3 of the last 4, and he was second in the other year. Like, he's won 3 MVPs. If he hadn't won a single MVP during all of that, and he's putting up these kind of numbers, then we could complain. Or if he'd only won 1, we could complain. When you've won 3 out of 4, you can't complain about the MVP voters not giving you respect. You can't.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I do think that he's doing that intentionally in the same way that he knows when to get himself thrown out of a game or when to really go after the officials, stuff like that. He's definitely has a nose for that. I think he's doing that in a sense to make sure that people aren't forgetting or aren't just normalizing some of the things that Jokic is doing, which to Malone's credit, I think I think he has normalized greatness in a lot of ways. And so I think that there's that. Plus, I think that it helps kind of maintain that identity of being the disrespected, the underserved, underlooked, underappreciated team that they were when they made their first title run ever. And so even though, to a certain degree, to your point, it kind of becomes manufactured the way that Jordan did with the Bulls and the way that LeBron tries to do. So sometimes where it's like, okay, when Anthony Davis and LeBron are being like, everyone's counting us out as the LA Lakers. It's like, really?
Right.
They?
It's the Travis Kelce thing. We don't get any respect. And it's like, who doesn't respect the Chiefs at this point? It came across a little bit like that, but no, what Jokic is doing has been amazing. The Nuggets still worry me a little bit. I don't know that what they've been doing of late during the winning streak is sustainable. We shall see.
Again, it just goes back to those sentences with Jokic, where I saw a graphic. I have to apologize. I don't know exactly who made it originally, where it came from, but they put up a graphic that showed Jokic's current point, rebound, and assist averages. And right now, he is averaging more points than Shaquille O'Neal's highest point average in his prime, more rebounds per game than Tim Duncan in his prime, and more assists per game than Chris Paul and his greatest season in terms of assist average. He is averaging more points, rebounds, and assists than 3 all-time great scorers, rebounders, and passers in NBA history at their peak. And obviously, they've got 60, 70 games left to play where he'd have to keep that up, and he likely won't. But it just goes to show you that every time you think there is a ceiling or a limit with Nikola Jokic, that theory gets tested very quickly afterwards.
Yeah, but I do think, like, if they finish, he won an MVP when they were the 6th seed. That was the year Jamal didn't play. If they're the 6th seed in the West, he ain't winning the MVP. He's just not. SGA is going to win it because he's going to lead the league in scoring, and the Thunder are going to be the 1 seed. Like, and that would not be, that wouldn't be getting robbed of it, right? Like, should Jokic have won it the year Embiid won it? Probably. But if you look at this 4-year stretch and you said, hey, these 2 guys have been great players. One of them got 3 MVPs. One of them got 1. Pick the year. You'd probably go, that's fair.
The reason that gripe about the one that was stolen from him that they gave to Embiid because of the ridiculous discourse that Kendrick Perkins and others tried to put out there, and you had a little bit of a bias about, well, we can't give him this many MVPs in a row because it puts him in line with Wilt Chamberlain and Hakeem Olajuwon or whoever it was.
Right.
And he's not there yet. And the only reason that doesn't continue to get griped about here locally, which as one I can admit, sometimes Denver fans, have an axe to grind for too long about certain things.
Yeah.
Is because he won Finals MVP and they won their first championship. If they gotten knocked out, that would still be a drum that's getting banged even today. So to close it out here, what does your gut tell you? Are we looking at MV4? Are we looking at You think he's going to win the MVP again?
He goes out and he one-ups himself somehow, some way. I think he's going to win the MVP again.
I think so too, and I can't wait. Nikola Jokic is undoubtedly. Aaron Gordon is going to go down as my favorite nugget of all time. I've just become a massive Aaron Gordon fan and whatever. Jokic, if he's not already, is going to go down as a top 10 NBA player in NBA history. Even if he may never have to another dribble a basketball again after this season to achieve some of that. But I truly am going to make it a priority to emphasize how great it is that we get to watch him night in and night out and the things that he can do. And I do think that when you have a player of that caliber, similar to how we've talked about the Avs with McKinnon and Rantanen and McCarr and Landeskog and all of that, how you need, you don't want to become the 2019 Toronto Raptors, and have that one championship. And then you're kind of just like you're the answer to a trivia question 10 years later. So I think they need to try to maximize it while they can. And I think they've got through 2026, 2027 with their core four now locked down. But regardless, I know that anything's possible with Jokic, and I can't wait to see where it unfolds.
He's already, and this is going to be controversial, he's already the greatest player in any sport in the history of Denver.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
And he won a championship and
in
he was
4
finals
years.
MVP, and he won a championship on a team that nobody thought could ever do it, in a league that is set up, at least historically, has been set up to where it's hard to win it if you're not on the coast. That's a bigger accomplishment than winning a Super Bowl or winning a Stanley Cup. He's the greatest player in the history of Denver sports.
I don't disagree with you, and I think that's a great place to end it. James, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Sounds good.
Have a good day, everybody.
Keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams.